Hey guys, it's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. So I wanted to do a quick video just talking about Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen is a game that is a homage to the Dark Souls series, I guess you would say, that came out a few years ago. The company who released it recently did a game called The Surge, which was way more well received. I had just rebeaten Dark Souls. I played the remastered version, really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun, and decided to go back and play something a little different, just to kind of play a Dark Souls type game, but not Dark Souls. So I decided to give Lords of the Fallen a shot. They had given it away, I think, on PS4 and Xbox sometime last year. So I had messed with it a little bit here and there, but not really made a ton of progress. Think of Dark Souls, but much clunkier, not nearly as fast, and everything feels very weighty and heavy. So when you play Dark Souls, which is an action third-person RPG, I guess is the best way to put it, that's sort of what Lords of the Fallen is like. However, in Lords of the Fallen, when you swing your weapon, it's very slow. Even the fastest weapons in the game that I used still were not fast. They just were faster than the slow weapons. Um, you're pretty much this guy who is going around killing all of these lords, hence the name of the video game. They're like big monsters that, occupy certain areas. Uh, the story was okay. I didn't find it to be like anything great. It's definitely more of a cohesive sort of like here's what's happening story, unlike Dark Souls, which is sort of ambiguous. I'm going to do a lot of comparisons to Dark Souls because that's sort of what they were going for. The combat is, very defensive oriented. You can't just run in and start hitting. You can on occasion, but really you have to sort of get your hits in and then back up or roll. The rolling is way slower and not nearly as effective as Dark Souls, I find. I just beat the game a little while ago, by the way. Some of the last bosses were very, very cheap, mind you. Um, Dark Souls felt fair, um, but you can get good or upgrade your guy and over level to become better. This sort of has that element where you need to over level, but it also felt sometimes like they really ramped up the difficulty just to kind of screw you over. Um, I guess sort of like what people say about Dark Souls 2. I thought the graphics were really nice. I thought that the imagery was nice and the graphics were really cool. The setting is medieval. The game The Surge that's out more recently, that one is futuristic with like robot parts, science fiction-y. This one is set in like a medieval type realm. Um, just like Dark Souls, you go to, it's not a bonfire, it's these like gems that float in the air and you can replenish yourself. The difference is you can actually bank your experience points, excuse me, at these gems, um, and then use them whenever you want. Where in Dark Souls, if you die and you don't make it to a bonfire, you lose them. Here, if you die, you can recover your experience and your soul or whatever, but you can also bank them anytime you're at a checkpoint. So it's a little more forgiving in that regard. Um, what else? There were some major differences. The enemies don't respawn when you use a checkpoint or get your health back or whatnot, but if you die, they do. Um, some of the enemies were very cheap and annoying. Some of them had to be defeated certain ways. Like there's one called a tyrant, which has like a heart in a vase, and you have to break the vase and take the heart before you can kill the tyrant. So like he'll whoop your ass, and he'll just keep regenerating his health until you take the heart and find it in the level. Usually it's fairly close by, but it's annoying. Um, so that kind of sucked. I didn't like those enemies at all. There was these ghosts that fly around that you can't hit. You have to use like you have this gauntlet that shoots out like laser beams. You have to use so they're like things you had to do very specifically, which I didn't really enjoy. Um, it was very much point A to point B. You can go back to old levels. There is no like warping. You have to go through the levels and you can find different exits and there's shortcuts and stuff. It was very convoluted. I felt like some of the levels were very maze-like and difficult for me to figure out where to go. So I didn't like that either. As I said, the combat was okay, but very, very clunky. I think it fills that void if like you've beaten all the Dark Souls and want to play something else. Like in my instance, I love Dark Souls 1. I really like Dark Souls 2, and that's the game I first played when I played Dark Souls. So that took me some time to get into because it's very hard. And then I played Dark Souls 3 and really, really loved that one as well. I would say my favorites are probably Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3. I have yet to play Demon Souls because that was a PlayStation exclusive, and I have yet to play Bloodborne because that was also a PlayStation exclusive. However, I may borrow my friend Brian's PlayStation 4 and play Bloodborne, hopefully. So we'll see. He has a downloaded copy, so I could probably borrow his system and play it pretty easily. Um, Lords of the Fallen was okay. It felt like it was trying to do different things, but the combat really threw me. I felt it was just very clunky and slow. I always felt weighted down no matter what. I encountered a glitch at one point when my guy was weighted down, even though he really wasn't. And he was still just rolling slow and hitting slow. Nothing ever feels fast and fluid. Everything's very clunky. So if you can get past those mechanics and understand that they are going at things differently than Dark Souls, but the crux of the game is Dark Souls like, you may get something out of it. As I said, the story is definitely more coherent and like, it tells you what's happening throughout the game. Um, it was an okay story. It wasn't amazing by any means. Some of the monster design was cool. Some of it was very bad and boring. Um, Overall, like I said, the graphics were nice. The sound was good, but when I was playing it, I kept hearing the guy breathing. Like it sounded like he was an overweight man. He was like, I don't know what that was about. He just always sounded like he was out of shape, which was funny because you're playing as this huge, either warrior, rogue, or cleric, or mage, or whatever. Um, Overall, it was okay. It's not something I would buy. It's definitely not something I would play like New Game Plus, where I did with Dark Souls. Well, I guess I didn't. I played it again on the remastered version, but I wouldn't do that with this. It actually turned me off in ways to where I don't know if I really want to play the Surge now. It's not necessarily a bad game. It's just not a great game. And some of their design choices I felt were a little iffy. Supposedly those have been remedied in the Surge, but it still doesn't really give me much hope. So tell me, guys, if you played Lords of the Fallen to quench your Dark Souls thirst, what did you think of it? Did you play the Surge? What do you think of this team that makes these games? And how do you think it compares to the Dark Souls series or Bloodborne or whatnot? Thanks, guys, for watching. It's Vampire Mike from Sega CD Universe. Be good.